All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce our look at the discussion section. So we're going to spend a brief little bit of time on this just because it's not due for a little bit, but I do want to put that on your radar so that you have the content requirement, the APA requirement. You can start thinking about how you're going to be writing your discussion section. All right, so your discussion section, what is going to go in to your discussion section? Well, first off, notice that we're writing the discussion section. So we've written the methods, we've written the results. Now we're going to write the discussion section. And you'll notice we haven't written the introduction yet. And that's a very typical strategy for writing a research report. It's almost like writing a murder mystery novel. You figure out the ending first, and then you write the beginning to kind of point the reader to the ending. So that's what we're going to be doing for our discussion section. We're going to write the ending. What does it all mean for our research paper? And then knowing where we want to end up is going to help us figure out how to write that introduction. So in terms of the content of the discussion section, this is where you finally present the conclusions of your research. So the results section told the reader what you found, what were the results, what were the numbers, what were the differences between the different groups. The discussion section is now where you say what those differences mean. What do those numbers mean? What are the implications of that information from the results section? So you want to present the conclusions from your research. You want to indicate whether your research fits with previous theories or does it not fit with previous theories. And you need to point out why or why not. So for example, the work that we've done, the results that we found, was that what Roediger and McDermott would have expected based on their theories of reconstructive memory? The results that we found, was that what Weldon and Bellinger would have expected given their work on group memory? The results that we found, was that what other researchers from your other three articles would have expected if their theories were true? And if it was something that they would have expected, that means our research fits with previous theories, and you would say things like, oh, Roediger and McDermott found high rates of false memories in their studies. We also found high rates of false memories in our studies. Therefore, it fits with Roediger and McDermott's ideas. And if it doesn't fit, then you have to indicate what is it about our results that don't mesh with those previous theories. And then the last sort of part of the discussion section, you want implications of the research. You want to tie your research into something about the real world. So if our results are true, if this is the way that reconstructive memory works, if this is the way that group memory works, if groups have just the same number of false memories as individuals do, but they have higher confidence in their false memories than individuals do, what does that mean for the world? What should we do? What should our education system look like? What should our judicial system look like? We don't have to do all the implications. Just think about one application of our results to the real world. What should the real world be like given what we found in our lab? And then the final portion of this is future research directions. And a future research direction can be thought of as that post-credit scene in any Marvel movie that tells you about the next movie that's coming out, to kind of get you excited and think about, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what they're going to do next. So we're going to do the same thing here. And future research directions, the biggest mistake that beginner writers make is they forget when they give a future research direction to give a reason why they're going to have that future research direction. And what I mean by this is, what are you hoping to show? What would certain results indicate? So if I was thinking about future research directions for this study, we just finished taking a look at group memory and false memory. A future research direction for this might be something like, well, we did it with adult-aged individuals. What if we did it with children? What would happen in that case? Speaking of different ages, what if we did it with elderly individuals? And we did it in the afternoon. What if we did it in the morning? And we did it with words. What if we did it with pictures? And we did it with English words. What if we did it with foreign language words? And we used humans. What if we used wolves instead? And we used, we projected it on a screen. What if we heard it tape recorded instead? There's a million future research directions. And all of them could be exciting. All of them could be interesting, but only if you give a reason. So an example of a reason would be, we'll choose one of the more ludicrous ones. We'll choose the wolf one. It's like, yes, we could do future research direction. I would love to do this research with wolves instead of humans. Why? Well, because wolves are social animals, right? They run in packs. They're highly social. So if these results that we found about false memories are due to the social aspects of human interaction, then as much as wolves are social, we should find the same patterns in wolves. If, on the other hand, what we found has nothing to do with us socially interacting, then we're probably not going to find those with wolves. All of a sudden, the wolf study goes from being ludicrous to being something that I would like to read. And again, it's because you need those reasons. Why are you doing this? What would it show if it went this way? What would it show if it went that way? Try to think about what that future direction might be. All right, any questions on just this general outline of what we're going to be doing? Okay. So in terms of other content stuff, a tip for writing your discussion section, the way that you want to start is you want to start with whether or not your results that you just, that your reader would have just read, you want to start your first paragraph with whether or not the results that you just reported support or refute your hypothesis from the introduction. So you'll notice that this is going to take a little bit of imagination because you haven't written your introduction yet. So you are going to want to write as if you have already written your introduction. You're going to want to write your discussion as if you've already fixed all the issues and planned out your introduction, and you've already written a great introduction. So for this, whether or not your results support or refute your hypothesis, the hint is that it should support a hypothesis. And we'll go over next class how to come up with hypotheses, but it should support one hypothesis at least that came from your introduction. And if it doesn't, then you have to rewrite your introduction. So this is something that we all kind of intuitively know. And this is something that becomes apparent when you understand that your research report is not a diary, it's not a journal of what we did and what we thought at the beginning versus what we thought in the middle versus what we thought at the end. It is a story where we present the truth. We're not making stuff up, but we present the truth to a reader in a compelling manner. So it's a story that needs to be compelling. This, having a hypothesis in the introduction that is supported by the results, makes it a compelling story. It works with the way that our mind is wired. And the best analogy for this is the mystery murder novel. So I don't know if you've ever read a mystery murder novel or if you've seen one of the mystery murder type movies, but we've seen the Test Your Awareness with Lady Smythe, as any horticulturist will know. That example from before. So we all know that final scenario where the detective has looked at all the clues and done all the deduction, and they're in the room, and the three suspects are in the room with them, right? And there's the butler, and there's the maid, and then there's the mailman, right? And the detective is sitting there, and he goes, well, it couldn't have been the butler, because the butler is left-handed, and clearly this murder was committed by a right-handed person because of the slashes. We know that they slashed from left to right instead of right to left. So it couldn't have been the butler, it's not the butler. So now the maid and the milkman are sweating it out, and they go, well, it couldn't have been the maid, because at the time of the murder, the body was thrown into the river, so it must have been murdered on this particular date. The maid was out of the country on that particular date, so it couldn't be the maid. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's got to be the milkman. If at that point they say, and it's not the milkman, you're like, what? You're a little confused. And it's like, yes, it couldn't have been the milkman. In effect, it is his elementary school teacher, which we mentioned in one paragraph. And yes, they're the murderer. Surprise, right? People hate that. People absolutely hate those stories because it's just pulled out of nowhere. And this elementary school teacher comes in and they're like, yeah, I guess I'm the murderer. And nobody's satisfied. Don't do that to your readers. Don't set up your introduction and say, ooh, hypothesis one is that if this theory is true, we should find this pattern of false memories. Hypothesis two is if this theory is true, we should find this pattern of false memories. And lo and behold, here in discussion, neither of them is true. Surprise, it's the elementary school teacher. No, go back, rewrite your introduction and say, if it's the elementary school teacher, we'll find this pattern of results. That's why we're writing the introduction later. So we're going to figure out our ending. One of your hypotheses is going to be supported, and again, we'll show you how to come up with hypotheses, but make sure that that pops up in the introduction, that you have suspects in the introduction, one of whom is the eventual murderer in your discussion section. All right, now the last kind of tip that I'll just put on your mind to keep in, there's a few things that I do not want to see, a few things that you should never say, and these are things that, once again, a beginner writer tends to try to put into their papers. So these are things that I do not want to see at all, and you should never write. Never write more research is needed. The reason why these never say things are here is not because they're false. It's because they're ineffective. It's because they detract from your story. It's because they cut out the legs from the boldness of your scientific assertions. So when you say more research is needed, that sounds true because nobody's ever going to finish psychology. Nobody is ever going to do an experiment, write it up and say, oh, well, that's it, psychology's done. I guess all our psychology researchers are out of a job. Nobody's going to do that, right? So more research is always needed. But the way that this is used is to basically say, well, I don't want to stand behind my assertions. I don't want to be wrong later on. So rather than say, this is what our results mean, and this is how memory works, I'm going to say, maybe this is how it means, and how it works, and maybe this is what our results mean. But more research is needed. We need to look at more things before we can be sure. We always need to look at more things before we can be sure. But this is just backpedaling and not being bold. We want to be as bold as we can. So when you write, think about that detective in the final chapter of that murder mystery novel. And they're always like, it's not the butler because of this, and it's not the maid because of this. It is, in fact, the elementary school teacher, right? Because of this, right? They're always bold. They're always big. They're never like, well, I don't know. I don't think it's the butler. Maybe. I have some evidence here. If this is any good for anybody, I'm kind of feeling it's the elementary school teacher. Maybe. No. You want to be bold. You want to be big. Don't say more research is needed. Other things. More subjects could have been run. This is a favorite. Once again, this is true. More subjects could have been run. We ran 181. We could have run 200. Would be better. We could have run 300. Would be better than 200. More subjects could always have been run. Again, what this means is I don't want to stand behind my results. I don't want to stand behind my assertions. Let me hide by saying, you know what? More subjects could have been run. Cannot conclude for certain. This, again, is true. This is what science is like. I get very annoyed when people say things like, well, science has proven this, science has proven that. No, science has never proven anything. You can't prove anything. You can never conclude for certain. It's sort of like with any decision, you can never be certain. So if you are traveling somewhere and you're coming back to South Bend and you ask your friend to pick you up at the airport, and you ask your friend, can you pick me up Friday night at 8? And your friend is like, yes. And you're like, are you sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, yes, I will be there. And you're like, are you really sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, yes, I am dependable. I'm really sure. And you're like, are you really, really sure you're going to be there? And your friend is like, absolutely, I will not let you down. And they're like, are you really, 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 like really positively, absolutely, really totally 100%, can you prove for certain that you're going to be there? Your friend, no matter how dependable, is going to say, no, I can't. I might get hit with a meteor on the way there. The earth might explode. I don't know. I might not be able to make it. You can never conclude for certain. What this tells the reader is that you have no faith in your work. You have no courage behind your convictions. Don't write it. It literally just chops the legs off. If I was reading a research paper and I got to the end and I saw any of these three statements, I would think to myself, why did I waste my 2 hours of my life reading this? If they won't stand behind what they say, why should I have any faith in what they've done? All right, so don't say that. And this is going to be the general outline that we're going to use. So you're going to present the conclusions from your research. Does it fit with your hypotheses and what was found? Does your research fit with the previous theories? Does it fit with what Weldon and Bellinger said? Does it fit with what Roediger and McDermott said? Does it fit with Dease? Does it fit with some of your other articles? And you don't have to go through all 6, right? We're not going to be exhaustive. We just need to hit these notes. Implications of the research. What does it mean for the real world? What should we do in the educational system? What should we do in the judicial system? What about Wall Street? What about the way that movies are made? What about mob mentality? Anything that you can think of, we need one implication and then one future research direction and give reasons, and that is in general your discussion section. So that's going to be the content. Any questions on that? And again, we'll cover a little bit more detail about what that is all about. In terms of the APA requirements, all previous requirements are moving forward from before, so anything from the method and the results section. New requirements, check out the organization of the report. It'll basically reproduce a lot of the info that I gave you here, but it's nice to have a second perspective. And then the big thing, though, that we're going to now adopt is citing and referencing your sources. You're going to have a lot of citations in your discussion section, mostly because you're going to be talking a lot about other people's theories. So in the method section, we had one citation. We said we took our stuff from Roediger and McDermott. In the results section, we had no citations. It was all us. It was all our results. In the discussion section is where we start saying things like, oh, this fits with Weldon and Bellinger. Oh, this fits with Roediger and McDermott. These researchers thought that this was the case. These other researchers thought that this was the case, but our results show that this is the case. So we're going to be citing a lot. So check out citation style in that citing and referencing sources section. And that's the only big new one. So keep formatting your report, double space, Times New Roman, 1-inch margins all around. And that's the APA requirements. So all of this is going to be due November 19th. So that makes sense. November 19th. So we are going to have one more class where we'll go into a little bit more detail about all these requirements. You have to, once again, submit this to turn it in. This is going to be the last one submitted to turn it in, your last chance to get feedback to help you improve your final research paper. If you're looking at what length, about 2.5 pages is that nice sweet spot for how long your discussion should be. So we're not looking for an exhaustive look at every single theory and thing that you read about. We're just looking to hit those high notes or those spots with 1 or 2 ideas, and that'll take about more than 2, less than 3 pages typically. That's if it's double space, Times New Roman, and 1-inch margins all around. And once again, it's going to be peer reviewed. This is the last one that'll be peer reviewed, so it'll be submitted through Turnitin. All right. Any final questions on that? Okay.